So I think we should not be afraid. I mean, for everyone who's so worried about their talent moving on, let's turn the light back on you. At a point, you were raw talent also. You got to work in some spaces with some people you grew. You have this vision that you're running with. And for you to where you are, the high skill in whatever competence area that you have, and you're now putting together this team, you have also grown and moved on from spaces. And that is why I'd rather have the conversation that we need to be as generous with our talents as maybe where the places we have grown up through have been generous to us.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Techpoint Africa Podcast. Thank you for always joining us, whether you're watching us or listening to us on any of our podcast platform, or watching us on YouTube, or you watch just on Instagram. You might not be able to watch the full clip, but you get my drift, right? Yes, thank you for watching us. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for your feedback and your comments. We do not take any of that for granted. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you can be notified anytime a new episode is out. And if you're listening to us on any of our podcast platform, please share with others and get them to listen to the goodies you are listening to. Yes, we can also catch up on other episodes too. Yes, so today I'm here today. Oh, I didn't mention my name. If you don't know me, I am Oluwanifemi Kolawole, and I'll be your host today. And I have a very interesting guest in the house today. But before I introduce our guest, if you remember the last time you saw my face on this episode, like this format of Techpoint Africa Podcast, we discussed talent migration and whether or not it is causing Nigeria talent drain. And if you can check the description box for the podcast episode, but it will display somewhere here. You know where I'm pointing, right? It will display somewhere there. And I also wrote an article bringing together several experts' opinion about the conversation. You will also see the link in the description. But today, that is not what we are here to discuss, right? Today, we are here to discuss how companies or employers or businesses should respond, react, or act whenever their talents are leaving. And not just leaving, whenever their talents are migrating, like leaving the country, whether they know about it, whether they got a notice, or they just saw that they are not coming to work again and they heard that this one has jackpot. Well, how should they react? And with me to discuss it today is Dolapo Agbede. Dolapo Agbede is a people person, right? And that is why she's the best fit for this conversation. She's a DEI expert, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she's a transition coach. That is when you want to move from one career to another, she can advise you on that. And she also has interest in tech and neuroscience. She's the founder, and she has over 17 years of experience in ICT, payment solution, telecommunication, talent management, and business administration. That's a lot of experiences, and you should believe our words today. Of course, she'll be telling you our opinions, but you will definitely see sense in them. So thank you for joining us today, Dolapo. Welcome to the Techpoint Africa Podcast.
Thank you so much, Techpoint fans. Thank you, Oluwanifemi.
Thank you for having us today and for joining us here. As I mentioned the other time, we're not talking about talent living today, right? If you remember from the last episode, we discussed talent migration, right? If you listen to it, you can go back and listen to it. There was a place Olawale mentioned the fact that it is not actually the talent fault, right? The world is a global market, and everybody else on the continent in every part of the world is competing with you for your talent. So it is open to them to look for exposure somewhere else, to look for opportunity somewhere else. It is the onus is on them. They can do whatever it is they want. But how should you react if you own a company, if you own a startup. That is what we are discussing here today. And I would like to start with this part of the conversation that somebody mentioned for the article I was talking about. One of the professionals I talked to, she deals with outsourcing developers and engineers, and she was like, it's the senior developers that are leaving and the mid-level developers and those are the ones that the company need. Is there like a pattern there to lose more professionals than the ones that are lower on the ladder?
Thank you, Oluwanifemi. So the thing is, in the spaces of work today, you can have different strategies. Most spaces want talent that can hit the ground running. So the part of building the talent might not be the priority of some organizations, especially since you mentioned startup. When you're starting, you need talent immediately because you need to show evidence of this idea, this product, this service that you're giving. So this is not the time of trial and error. You're probably bootstrapping anyway. So you want to make sure that every penny, kobo, cent you are paying must be yielding the right kind and quality of result.
Yeah.
So when you have that top of mind, there are some certain roles within the team that you do not negotiate about them coming on board with the full skill. There might, with succession planning in mind, you might have somebody already shadowing them, but that shadow must also have the right kind of background for them to be able to pick up, learn, and then of course that person too can move on.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, for any startup, there's really no time. If you are bootstrapping, you're not too liquid, unless you have people who are putting in sweat equity with you. So that's the kind of person who will be like, okay, don't pay me. But look, bills exist, right?
True.
Everybody has bills. And so when you are aware that with this my current skill, I could earn in 7 digits somewhere. Even if it's the low 7 digits, it's still 7 digits.
Right.
And then you can only currently give me something very low in 6 digits. In fact, it's barely scaling into 6 digits because that is where the company is in terms of what they can put into their cash flow to pay.
Afford.
Yes. So, in those realities, unless you are kind of like emotionally invested in something, you will seek your greener pastures.
Yes.
But there are ways to still have buy-in, and that's why in the now of work, we talk about, when people are still talking about future of work, it's already here. It's now. In the now of work, it's better to tie talent to deliverables so that, this talent in the time, they can commit to delivering yours and still deliver somewhere else. Or the only area where there's a lot of gray is how do you make sure that we do not have
conflict of interest.
Fantastic. How do you make sure that the idea over here does not morph into the other side? But again, you now see that bigger organizations kind of like have this, right? Where you have maybe a customer service outfit. You're providing customer service for different clients. So but it's implicit that you would know how to manage making sure that confidentiality between the different the different clients you have is maintained so that one person's strategic differentiation is not leaked to the other side. So when you can find as a talent, if you can find your ethical way to make sure that lines don't get crossed, and then you begin to gain that reputation in the marketplace, then people can trust you or trust the people that you're pulling up. But the thing is, look, there are some realities. Number one, organizations are looking for people to hit the ground running. Number two, the talents have bills to pay and they have aspirations too. Number three, there might always be that better offer. So what do you do to make sure they still commit to you?
So those experts, in a way, they've learned all they have to learn. So it's for them to, compared to the ones that are still low, they are still in the junior level. For them, it's just like, I need to retain myself in a place and learn, right, the let's say the anxiousness or the enthusiasm to leave quickly might not be there as much as it is for the ones that are top of the ladder.
So, again, let's look at it this way. For a person who's very experienced, you can pick and choose, and then your learning curve is shorter because you've already come quite a long way. Things are changing kind of like on the fly right now. So if you are not even actively upskilling, you will become obsolete. So even the experienced person is upskilling very regularly, following the trend, trying to stay ahead of the curve. There will always be that initial set of people. Like, there was a time, there are some roles that did not exist, like data analyst.
Some years back.
10 years ago, what was that? A cloud engineer?
No, of course. Not really.
5 years ago. A DEI expert? What is that? So there's some roles that are coming up. I saw something about, there was a LinkedIn ad for a metaverse product manager.
Interesting.
That's barely 1 year to have that kind of profile as someone you want to hire. So the thing is, the world and what they want to pay for is evolving every time. I would rather liken the people who are in the entry to mid-career, I would rather liken them to people who have gone through school to do the basic knowledge, and they're kind of like they're interns, they're on the job. Because there's a way that if you do not practice, you cannot even sharpen what you know.
True.
And when you don't know enough, your creative side cannot now give it your own flavor. Because in the end, we're all individuals. The way you would do something and I would do something, the outcome, the deliverable might be similar. But the style we use to bring it out, whether it's even in the interaction with our fellow team members, would be... So we're different experiences. And it would always show in the outcome. But again, if you have a structured space where the deliverable, what it must be, is like kind of like cast in stone, of course you get it done to that specification. But you see there will be that team leader or that team member who's nicer to work with than the other, and that's where we are different.
Yes. So I'm seeing a nuance here that if you train, like say the professionals are leaving, migrating out of the country, and you say you want to train the mid-level ones and the junior ones to become professionals, won't they leave too?
So which is why, again, succession planning is important. And when you find more structured places, you hear them talking about pipeline, talent pipeline.
Yeah.
What does that mean? There's the entry part and people are coming out. It's normal to outgrow a space. In our parents' time and our grandparents' time, for those who are in structured spaces, they outgrew it with retirement.
Yeah.
Right? Even if they wanted to stay, the organization will say no.
You've used 35 years.
Then there was a season, and if we look at Nigeria, there was a time when job losses were not normal.
Yeah.
It was guaranteed that once you got a job you would do your 35 years. But again, with things changing, some organizations are not there anymore. Some manufacturing plants are no longer relevant, or the sector they are working in has become mature. Like any teacher now that's teaching like high school grade, secondary school grade people, who is not comfortable with delivering their lecture and doing their student engagement via online technology now.
Absolutely, they can't cope.
And you insist on using white chalk on the black, not even a whiteboard. It's
the word has left you.
And even that village that you might be in, with digital access, very soon, once there's one smart device in there, and even if it is 3G that is there, they would realize that there's more, and you will be eventually obsolete too. So I think we should not be afraid. For everyone who's so worried about their talent moving on, let's turn the light back on you. At a point, you were raw talent also. You got to work in some spaces with some people you grew. You have this vision that you're running with. And for you to where you are, the high skill in whatever competence area that you have, and you're now putting together this team, you have also grown and moved on from spaces. And that is why I'd rather have the conversation that we need to be as generous with our talents as maybe where the places we have grown up through have been generous to us. And if they were not generous to us and we had to end up living in a very discordant, very uncomfortable way whereby they're still guilt tripping you till now, but you know you have to move on to go push this dream of yours, then when you see others trying to push their dreams, I expect you to be a bit more generous.
We're already moving towards how these people should react. I mean, employers and companies should react. But before we move towards that, you mentioned the other time that one of the reactions, maybe typical reactions that business owners or companies or founders give or show when they get the notice that one of their talents is traveling abroad or leaving is fear. Right? How do we get somebody else to occupy this? It's a typical reaction. Are there other reactions that business owners show?
Should explore. Well,
no, like show
like
typically. That is not, of course, the ideal one.
Honestly, something that is already going so good, it's going to give you a brand new headache for you to now suddenly start thinking, for something I've taken my eyes off, it's running on almost autopilot. They already know how the things need to be so that we can face the other things that still need attention. It's like we're coming back to give it attention. So there's no way there'll be the initial reaction when something will destabilize, disrupt, because we can't call it transform. Transform kind of like has everybody's buy-in. But disruption is something is a surprise to at least one person. With disruption, maybe within the team, they all know, they're all whispering it to themselves. But you're the last to know. At that point in time, like anyone who suddenly the thing that you thought was okay is suddenly like kind of like upside down, your first reaction is, oh no, it's quite selfish actually, because you're like, where am I going to start from again?
It's normal.
So it's a natural reaction, and which is why the second step that should come in should be maybe that ability to step back and have a conversation with your talent. Because in the end, everybody who is some sort of founder or a business leader, you must have experienced relationships in general. To the kind of point that, they talk about burning bridges, and by now you should know that burning bridges serves no one, ideally. So the next thing you'll be is, even if your natural instinct is to rant and, again, a huge part of being a leader is setting the tone. Then we should also hope that you have a healthy work culture where nobody is like intense or verbally abusive, or so that's not you don't just burst into that.
Right, so you're
really
training them
horrible and then start to swear or curse or remind them of how I picked you from this. Some people can be, if not for me, and I'm like, no, if not for the potential of that person, you would not have, if not for me, picked the person to join you. So there are many ways to look at it, and I always go back to put yourself in the talent's shoes. Because for everyone who's a leader now who is working with talents, you were once that talent that was accountable for only your own deliverable.
Yeah. So I'm sure you still have a lot to say about how employers should react when their talents are leaving, but I'm curious about being a people person and being a person that helps with transition and the time you've spent in human resource. I want to ask, why do you think companies have high churn rate?
So the thing is, the reason why companies used to have high turnover before and the reasons they have it now are quite different, in my opinion.
Okay.
So before, it used to be just about, when I say before, I'm talking pre-internet. Pre-internet, people were more or less content to remain where they were. The few people who had adventurous parents had sent them to school somewhere else. and then maybe they had just decided to stay there. But the visibility of the entire world that you have today through one device is unprecedented. So sitting here in a hot, nice sub-Saharan Africa, the description of what it means for the Eskimo that their snow is melting. Our great-grandparents did not hear anything about climate change, to speak less of the fact that we are an interconnected world. Today, you can pick your location and work anywhere. So today, you have talents that are spoiled for choice. So now, it's now going to be the other things that will help them make their decision of, do I stay in this organization? Do I stay in this country? Do I stay in this career path? Do I stay in a corporate space? Am I ready to explore my creativity? Do I want to be part of a system, or do I want to create something and others can come and join me? The thing is, the dynamics of we're spoiled for choice today, and there is space for everybody. There is truly space for everybody. So sometimes, again, because of the focus on the convenient, and this is why we say that it's time for organizations need to know that their talents are more social contract aware. And what is the social contract? In the spaces we work in, make sure it's nice. Make me feel good about coming to work. For the tools you give us, or even if I have to bring my own tool, there must be some sort of compensation that makes it make sense. It could be the culture of this space, the way we dress. I fit in and you allow me to be my best self, the way I want to come. So here we are respectful to each other, whether you're intern, youth copper, or you're senior exec. So the culture, the soft things, what is permitted in that space, what is not permitted, my interest in your growth. I can point you to, there are these courses here, and here, or we have this partner that is doing this, just in case. Guys, are you aware that this is happening? I mean, first mover advantage for the person with the highest score, the organization will pay. You can trigger healthy competition. There's some off the top of, for everybody listening right now, I am sure that if they asked you, mention 2 organizations that are your dream places to work, it will not be hard. You'll quickly call. So what is it that you know about those spaces that makes you aspire to be? So that means they must be really big on social contracts with their people, with their talents, with their. So before, years back in Nigeria, it was just staff boss could make the difference between the person choosing to work in this company or move to another one. Staff boss. Lunch at work. What is the net income? It could be less here, or maybe the HMO cover, the number of dependents it covers. So by the time you're checking and balancing, so your typical talent today is looking at beyond the bag. What else? And if you make that what else make enough sense, you might find out that bag might not even be the first consideration of your talent.
So there's this thing that they say, I've interviewed many experts on a series that I do, Expert and African, and I've seen different levels of what they believe in, whether they should stay in a company for a lot of years. But I've seen people that have stayed in companies for 20 years, for 15 years, while some people are doing 1 year, 3 months, then another 1 year in another place, then another 8 months in another place, climbing the ladder like that. I've seen those 2 different groups. Which school of thought do you belong to?
So in my book, everybody is right.
Okay.
In the sense that we need to, we're different, right? Our styles are different. Some people like the slow, steady, I'm comfortable here. Some others like to explore, they're more adventurous. And isn't that why they said that we have 4 different personality types of who's more likely to do what? But again, there's also the part of being in the space that is the core of your competence. So for example, an engineer who's working in an accounting firm, how far would they go and grow, no matter how big or structured it is, unless they have some idea to switch someday into some sort of accounting bit. they will be limited to IT, which is not bad in itself, because that same IT, put it in an IT firm, the accountant there you are in the non-core part of the business. So sometimes when you see people moving, it could just be that their interest, their competence is non-core to those spaces. Yes, they are the legitimate spaces whereby, again, going back to the very first question you asked, people want people who are ready. You don't want to train. So you might get an offer to come, and you will get more. You get a bigger title. You get a bigger for every time you move, because you can negotiate that. Oh, this is what I already have here. For me to move, I require this, which I did not have here, right? And then with that, people will now decide to make the move. But again, that place you're going to, they are going to be leveraging competencies you already have, that you have evidence of. And you would be smart to make sure that new place you go to, you better upskill. Because sooner or later, whatever it is they needed from you, might it will be put in place. The succession would be experienced. That sales or revenue ramp up would have happened. That network that you carry is already delivered. They've already started building relationships directly, so they might not need you anymore. So in the end, growth will happen. People will move, circumstances will change, we will all grow old.
True.
Our interests will change. What will be important to us might shift as we move for every decade of our lifetime. So even with that, the fact that there should be options, and those options should be respected. And the first person to respect you and your talent is you.
It's you. The first person to respect you and your talent is you. I hope you are catching those, Rema. Before we go on, let's pay homage to those people that are paying our salary.
Hi, I'm Abisola Adenoga, the head of business at Techpoint Africa. Did you know that you could present yourself as a reputable brand leader? Did you know that your business can get the limelight it deserves? Now you do. Using Techpoint Africa's marketing tools, we can put you in the faces of a large audience for brand awareness and thought leadership. To do this, reach out to us by sending an email to business@techpoint.africa or click on the link in the description below.
Welcome back to the Techpoint Africa Podcast. Thank you for staying with us for this long, and thank you, Dolapo, for all the words you've been sharing with us. I'm sure you're learning. And before we move on with this podcast, we have a few questions to go. I want to remind you of the FinTech Summit hosted by the Techpoint Africa team, and we are organizing this event to bring this conversation back to the fore of whether there are too many fintech startups in Nigeria, what they are capable of doing. We have different breakout sessions where we bring in experts from different fintech companies, and generally in the African or Nigerian fintech space in this regard. And we are going to discuss what it means to embed finance on your products, what it means to have a career in fintech, how you can get the next million user for your fintech app, and a lot of other things that will be discussed. All you just need to do is go to fintech.techpoint.africa and buy your ticket to attend. It is going to hold on November 26th at 4 Points by Sheraton. I hope to see you there. Don't worry, if you see me, just come and come. I know you Oluwanifemi. I saw you on the podcast. Of course, I'll give you audience. I'm nice like that. Let's get back to the conversation. So we said the other time whether you should leave quickly or you should stay in a company, and you mentioned the fact that everyone is right depending on some factors that you mentioned. And how do you think companies can keep their talent? You mentioned the other time that the bag sometimes, even though some very, very few people do not consider the bag as much as they consider the office culture or workplace culture, right? But the bag is still a thing. Your net pay. But it is very hard. It might be very hard for a Nigerian company to compete with a global company with, let's say, a company in the US, especially one that is even willing to offer them remote options, right, or tell them to come over, how do Nigerian companies or African companies compete with global companies for talent?
So I think it's, everybody needs to be pragmatic. There's something about when you know who you are and what you can do, you make your peace with it while you are growing.
Okay.
So I think this is one of the areas where who's in the leadership? Who are the founders? Who's in your advisory? What kind of weight do they bring? And what is even your aspiration or ambition for the organization as the executives that are running it to make it profitable? The reason why I went in this direction is because the clouds they carry, the expertise they bring, because isn't that why you have a board? So they're all bringing something to the table too. Now, those kind of things will be the elements. They would all bring elements that would make you a employer of choice. The same way, remember we did the little exercise of all of us listening to the podcast right now. Just think about it. If you could have your dream job, name the top 2 organizations, and you can easily call them. They're top of mind for you. Something has made them top of mind. Those things that made it top of mind is what makes those organizations employers of choice. You'll find out that those organizations, the queue to join them is so long that the number of people leaving are so few. That really serious shifts, maybe it's like age or something, that's making people eventually have to move on out of those spaces. One thing those organizations have in common would be that they are agile. They are relevant to the now of work. Once upon a time, for you to have a white collar job or a blue collar job, it was the definition was very narrow and straight. The blue collars were like this, the white were like this. But today it's blurred. You find out that a person who's leading a white collar enterprise is wearing overalls and his sleeves rolled up and his hands deep in grease also, whether it's digital grease or tangible physical grease. But the thing is, everybody is hands-on. Everybody is invested, and there's a way that becoming that employer of choice per stage that you find yourself, whether you're amongst the revenue organizations, because when you're starting, it's really tough. Whether your organization is pre-revenue, whether you're already breaking even, whether you're structured and you're becoming you are a unicorn or plus, in your band of competitors for the talents in that band, are you the organization of choice? If people were going to think about you, will you be top 2? Top 3, let's be generous. So the thing is, as you're even growing, the kind of people you need, I believe a person who is very open to interning talents that remember we talked about the pipeline, right? The talent pipeline. That's the end of that pipe needs to be in a pool.
Right.
In that pool, you don't know what you're going to pull into your system. But the thing is, you must also have something that real quick you'll be able to differentiate who from the point of hard skills, which is the core of the actual work you want them to do, and then the soft skills too. As well, who's that person who fits into your culture? You'll be able to give people an upskilling opportunity, and it helps you to begin to identify people that can join you.
Right.
So management training programs, internship programs, things like that.
But do you think companies are really ready for that?
So again, what is the life cycle of any company? And could we all just even admit that pre-COVID, things are tight? Spending is less. Inflation is doing its own thing too. So every kobo, cent, penny needs to go much further than it used to do. And that's why you find organizations optimizing. Maybe a role that used to, when everything was comfy and there was excess cash, maybe you had 3 people doing different things, and today you're suddenly realizing that
One person can do it.
one multi-competent, efficient person could earn the wages of 2 1/4, and the 3 persons' tasks or jobs or deliverable will be done. So with this optimization comes a restructuring of who and what, and then can you now imagine that this one optimized resource now chooses to leave? The vacuum will be bigger than when it was just a person doing a single thing.
Right.
But again, this is where the fact that we're a global talent village is wonderful. This is where it's important that your talents can be sourced from anywhere. Today, if you're ready to deal with time zone and possible language barrier, and you are open to having virtual teams, you might even find out that those your talents that have had to leave for whatever decision, the bag, the environment, better options for their offspring, whatever it is,
That they're living for.
they could actually still work with you remotely. It's just that your contractual, your employee contract is slightly different. So maybe where they were full-time with you, physically reporting to the office while they were here, now that they've left, they want to give you, 3 hours per week for whatever deliverable you absolutely need them to do because you like how they do. While you're still looking for who can do, my point is there are options, and the only way you can leverage these options is by being generous to your talent in the first place. So relationships, because again, they say that workplace that like blends and they're respectful, they're innovative together, everybody has a voice. Yes, they're the personalities that are louder and they're the first to say something, but the leader is careful to go around the room to make sure that quiet person, without shining a spotlight on them to make them uncomfortable, that person knows that in this place I will still speak, so they're rolling their eyes, but they contribute their bit too. So we're at that place where you work hard, you play hard together. You have a way. There was an organization that did something really interesting and gave spouse allowance.
Right.
You've engaged your significant other,
even if you want to
canvas for you to stay there.
Right. Even if they want to leave, this person will say,
So you can imagine that there are organizations that are doing little things like before, if you were going to have your child, you'd be so worried, and especially now that you really cannot. There are trust issues almost everywhere. Even the nannies don't want to be nannies anymore. They want to be tech innovators themselves.
Right.
So having that crash, knowing that you can walk down the corridor and see your baby and come back, seeing. So the little things, those little things. So a talent whose immediate concern was something. As they grow older, as things evolve, their requirements will shift and will change. And it's okay for them to outgrow that space. But what you would never take away is the good experience of their growth in that place, of the people they've had the privilege to work with. And when you need to place a demand on those experiences, you will be surprised that they would refer the organization. They will be an evangelist for you. They might even groom someone to replace themselves if they absolutely have to go. They might continue to support that person even when they're not physically there, to make sure that you, the organization, you still have good experiences with that person because they're still invested in that organization. It's just that circumstances, other things, it's just time to move. It's just time to move.
If I've taken anything away from what you've said now, relationship is a good one. Like, you might not be able to compete with global companies on some levels, especially when it comes to pay, right? But for some people, work culture is important to them. They can make compromises because of the way, because of the dynamics in that workplace. And that, I think that is key if I'm going to take anything out from what you've said today. And this is to every employer or startup founder or company owner, that having a good relationship with your employees is very, very key. It will save you in situations like this, that those people might even reconsider leaving, even when you are talking about like better opportunities somewhere else. And you've heard it from Dolapo today. with her experiences with people, she's telling you that you have to have a good relationship with them. Maybe the money is not all that matters every time.
Treat your people well. They'll treat you right when things are also in their hands.
Yeah, I don't burn bridges.
No.
Let people go when they want to go. Right. Thank you very much, Dolapo. You said a lot today, and I'm sure our listeners and people watching us have learned a lot from all we've discussed. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to see you guys sometime soon. This Japa series continues. We've discussed whether there's a brain drain today. We have also discussed how companies and business owners should react or respond whenever their talent decide to travel out. And coming soon, we will discuss the cost of hiring new talent to fill up those gaps left. Thank you again once again for joining us. Bye.